Rev up your engines!
Well, here we go again with GM loss of quality. GM is recalling a bunch of their full-size SUVs for loss of their power steering. Now, this is a bunch of 2021s. They just can't build them right. Go to the National Highway Traffic Safety Association.org website, put in your VIN number, you can see if yours is under it. You would lose your power steering. You'd still steer, you'd have to pull like mad. Of course, it's a giant vehicle, right? The fix is that the GM dealers will have to replace the entire steering gear motor. They can't make these things right. It's unbelievable. They've been building cars for all these years. They can't even make it so the power steering motor gear doesn't work right when they build them. These are brand new vehicles, big ones too. You need power steering in them. Now, if you're curious, this covers a 2021 Cadillac Escalade, Escalade ESV, 2021 Chevy Tahoe, 2021 Chevy Suburban, 2021 GMC Yukon, and a 2021 GMC Yukon XL. And if you really want to get technical, it's GM recall number N2123333901. I guess they got so many recalls, they got to have a number that long. They've got through so many of them over the ages. Well, take old Scotty's advice. Don't buy one of those junkers in the first place. You don't have to worry about any of that garbage. Well, it looks like it isn't just old Scotty being a cheapskate. The average age of vehicles on the road in the United States just rose to over 12 years old. So much for keeping up with the Joneses and buying a new car every couple of years. Well, they blame it on all kinds of things. People are buying less vehicles new because they're not out there, and vehicles are lasting longer, but it's pushed them that many years. 12 years is the average car on the road. Now, in an average year, new vehicles are 6.1% of the vehicles on the road, brand new ones. People are predicting that this year it'll be more like 5% of the cars on the road will be new cars. Now, this is the first time ever that the average car on the road was more than 12 years old. It's never happened before. Now, I don't blame people because the average price of a new car in the United States is now $38,255. Old Scotty's a cheapskate. My entire life, my own personal cars, and I've been driving cars for 53 years. I spent less than $7,000 for all of them combined. There's no way I'm going to pay $38,000 for one of them. 53 years, I spent $7,000, less than $7,000 on my own cars. Not much more than that on my wife's cars. I buy them used too. So if you think the cars on the road are looking older and older, no, it's not just you or me. They actually are older because people aren't buying cars. If your car lasts, why waste money on it? Let's say electric cars are going to be at the forefront sometime in the future. Hey, why even buy a car now? Keep your old car, keep it going. And if they do switch over, by then, they might have the things perfected. They might have charging stations for them. Or if they're going to be fuel cell cars, there might be hydrogen stations or ammonia stations, since ammonia can be stored a lot easier than hydrogen. Maybe there'll be ammonia fuel cell cars. Ammonia has mainly hydrogen in it anyways. It'll be NH3, so there's all kinds of things that can happen in the future. Don't bank on one. Use what works now, and then if it changes, then go to the new technology. Always pays to wait. Jay Hickman says, my 02 Saturn is locked up. My steering column is totally locked on an 02 Saturn SL2. I can't get out of park. I can't start the thing because the ignition won't turn. You got to make sure that your brake light's working because you can't get it out of park if your brake light doesn't work. But that has nothing to do with turning the key. Let's pray you listen to old Scotty over the years. In my drawers here, you know what I got? I got spare keys to all of my cars and motorcycle. I don't want to get stuck with one that won't start. Most cars and motorcycles today have immobilizer keys. They're a pain in the butt if you don't have a good one. It can cost a fortune to reset the whole system. Sometimes you've got to buy computer parts. But if you have a spare key that works, that's great. Then you go try the spare key. It could be your key is just one out. Let's pray you got a spare key, because if you don't, you're going to have a lot of fun. Let's say you don't have a spare key. Try Scotty's old trick. Get WD-40. Not the old stuff, but the new stuff, which is improved formula. Spray the key. Spray the lock assembly. Turn it. WD-40 doesn't hurt electronics, so spray it. Turn it. Maybe you can get it going. And if you can and it works, immediately go and get another good key made for it, because probably your key is wearing out. As keys age, the ridges get worn and then they don't fit right and you can't turn them. Pray it's that, because if it's not that, that'd mean it's the actual lock assembly itself. And when you have to replace those on modern cars, it's a pain in the butt because it has to be reprogrammed to accept your immobilizer system. It's not just simple buy a switch assembly assembly and put it in. It's a lot more complex than it was, but normally it's just the keys actually wearing out. But if WD-40 gets it going quick, get it going, go to a locksmith. Have them make you a couple of spares. Ryan 427 says, I replaced the entire AC system, but it still doesn't work perfectly. I got an 04 F4 250. I had the AC system replaced from the condenser to the evaporator. Even the high and low pressure switches are new. All parts except for the evaporator are motorcraft and still under warranty. Cooling fan works fine. Pressures are perfect. The evaporator condenses so much it drips on the rubber floor mat. You say it's dripping on the rubber floor mat. It should never drip on the rubber floor mat. First thing you want to do is have the evaporator case cleaned. If it's dripping on a floor mat, that means it's filling up with water and then spilling over into the drains and getting on the floor. If you got an evaporator that's filling up with water, guess what? It isn't going to work good. Air's supposed to blow over it, and if there's water in it, it won't work as well. You probably got a clogged evaporator drain. Pray it's that simple. It easily could. Now, it is F250 2004. It is modern, and realize that all that stuff is computer run. It's got to be open, the louvers to the evaporator inside there to make sure it's wide open. It could be that those blend doors aren't opening correctly and stuff like that. But if you really are getting water coming inside, you're not draining right. You got to make sure it drains right, because if it fills up with water, it will not work correctly. It's meant to work with air blowing through the evaporator. If a bunch of the evaporator has water on it, it will not work correctly. Start there. 97 Crown Victoria says, can I trust new old stock parts? Depends on what parts you're talking about. Now, it's a 1990, so what's that? 32-year-old car. The problem is, if you start buying old stuff from that, they're 32-year-old parts too, and they just might be flat worn out. He says, I have the original fuel pump, but I want a cheap Chinese make one. Can I get a Motorcraft new old stock fuel pump? In that case, I would say yes. It's an electric fuel pump. It's either going to work or it's not going to work. If it was built right, it's just sitting there. It doesn't degrade sitting there. The fuel pump just sits there, and in the box, both ends are shut with a plastic cap. So infinite amount of time just sitting there. It's not soaked in gasoline. It's sitting in the box with the ends closed. And if it's the original Motorcraft, yeah, perfectly fine. And it's a better idea than buying that cheap Chinese crap that doesn't work at all. That's a smart move. G5 Alive says, my RPMs won't drop. I got a 97 Subaru Outback. I took out the EGR valve, cleaned everything, any lines and pipes that went to it, checked the diaphragm, didn't find rips, put it together. Now it revs at 3,500. The settled at 3, I turned it off, waited, it's still high. Help. That's really high. I doubt if it's a vacuum leak. A vacuum leak will make it idle a little bit higher. It'll go up and down, but not 3,500 RPM. Odds are when you're working there, somehow you kinked the throttle. That's a 97. It's got an actual throttle cable. It's probably kinked and stuck. So check it. Take the air intake off. Look at it. It's probably stuck partly open. Clean it with throttle cleaner to get rid of the carbon if it's built up. Your throttle's got to be sticking, because there's no way it's going to idle that high with just a vacuum leak. Somehow the throttle got stuck. Look where you worked. Maybe you bent an arm and now it's pulling the throttle open, and you got to bend the arm back so the cable isn't pulled anymore, that it's got slack in it. Cables always have to have a little bit, maybe a quarter of an inch slack. And if it's tight, it's too tight. You got to give it more slack. Somehow, either something got bent or your throttle is stuck open. That's the problem you got. Vacuum leak isn't going to do something that high. Junkman666 says, my computer won't reset. I got a 2000 Infinity. It won't pass emissions because it said not ready. Catalyst, converter, and oxygen sensor not ready. You're in the twilight zone of cars now, and it happens all the time. If your catalytic converter, which is probably your problem, is weak, it will not let that mill not ready change for catalytic converter. It'll always say mill not ready. If it's starting to go bad, but it's not bad enough to make the check engine light on. I've seen people with cars go years that way, drive them thousands of miles, and they never get ready. But it's not bad enough to say the catalytic converter is bad, but it's not good enough to let it pass the mill not ready so you can get it inspected. That's an Infinity. I can just about guarantee you it's a bad catalytic converter. 22-year-old Infinity. They always eat up their catalytic converters. That's a problem with those cars, and that car's probably got 2 of them. They're expensive as can be. Your problem, I can just about guarantee you. I've worked on enough of those things. No, catalytic converters go bad. They don't trip the code yet. Eventually it would, but it won't let mill not ready go on, so even though your check engine light's on, you can't get your car inspected. You know, that is the hassle of it all. Maybe you should move to Rhode Island. Rhode Island, they're classic cars when they're 15 years old, and you don't need them emissions inspected. Or move to Clarksville here where they don't inspect them at all. Rip Hopper says, I have a slow drain that drains my battery. I've been through 3 brand new batteries, new alternator on a 93 Silverado. Help. Okay, watch my video. Fixing battery drain on your car. You have a drain somewhere. Something is draining it. And of course, the battery eventually will be ruined because it's drained out all the time. You get the test, watch the test that I have. You get a little meter and you measure everything and you'll see there's a drain and you got to figure out where it is. If you're lazy and you don't want to do that, every time you shut the car off overnight, just take the battery terminal off. It can't drain. It's like turning the switch off. Or you could even buy battery terminals that have a switch on them. So you open the hood and you turn the switch off. There's no power, and when you start it, you turn it back on. Then nobody's going to steal it either. So if you don't go to the trouble to figure out what it is, you can disconnect the battery when it's sitting there because it can't drain if the battery's disconnected. It has to have a completed circuit or it will drain nothing. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.